Unison with Infinity. Wield your spiritual power. From William Walker Atkinson's Personal Power Series. The esoteric or inner teachings of many schools of ancient and modern mysticism and occultism, of Oriental and Occidental lands, under many names and guises, have inevitably, invariably, and infallibly pointed to a supreme end to be gained by the student of the inner doctrine or ancient wisdom of the sages. That supreme end may be called unison with infinity, or conscious contact and attunement with the infinite spiritual principle of life, consciousness, power. The essential spirit and essence of this inner teaching is expressed in the statement of the message of truth, as announced in one form or another by the great spiritual giants and illumined teachers of the past and the present, of all lands and peoples, of all great religions. To the message of truth the truly wise listen. They commit it to memory and make it the essential and basic fact of their mental and spiritual life. Hearken ye to it. Ponder over it. Analyze it. Dissect it. Subject it to mental mastication, mental rumination, mental digestion, mental assimilation. Return to it again, and again you make it your very own. Here is the message of truth. You, yourself, in your essential and real being, nature and entity, are spirit and nothing but spirit, in and of spirit, spiritual and not material. Matter, in any and all of its forms, is your instrument of expression, the stuff created for your use and service in your expression of life, mind, and will. It is your servant, not your master. You condition, limit, and form it. You fashion it. When you recognize and realize your true and real nature and awaken to a perception of your real relation to spirit and of its relation to you. The report of spirit, received by its accredited individual centers of expression and by them transmitted to you, is this. In the degree that you perceive, recognize, and realize your essential identity with me, the supreme presence power, the ultimate reality, in that degree will you receive and be able to manifest my spiritual power. I am over and above you, under and beneath you. I surround you on all sides. I am also within you, and you are in me. From me you proceed, and in me you live, and move and have your being. Seek me by looking within your own being, and likewise by looking for me in infinity, for I abide both within and without your being. If and when you will adopt and live according to this truth, then will you be able to manifest that truth. In and by it alone are freedom and invincibility, and true and real presence and power to be found, perceived, realized, and manifested. The message of truth informs you that you must perceive, recognize, and realize your essential identity with the infinite presence power in order to be able to manifest that spiritual power. This perception, recognition, realization is experienced in completed reason, i.e., by combined and coordinated intellect and intuition. In the foregoing instruction, we have sought to awaken the intellectual perception, recognition, and realization. We trust that we have succeeded in doing so. The intuitional perception, recognition, and realization differ from the intellectual achievement, inasmuch as intuition does not need to be taught. It already knows. All that is required here is to awaken in intuition the fact of its own knowing, so that it may pass down to the field of intellect its report. This awakening may be effected in two ways, viz. 1. By considering the reports of the experience of those illumined souls who have preceded you on the path of attainment, and who have left behind them a record of their spiritual experiences. 2. By cultivating the actual spiritual contact between your individual spirit and the universal spirit, thus coming into actual unison and attunement with the latter. The contemplation and sympathetic reception of the reports of the great spiritual leaders of the race, those illumined souls who have reached the mountaintop of spiritual wisdom and spiritual consciousness, will serve to set up in your soul a degree and quality of spiritual vibration which will be sufficient to induce a responsive unison and attunement with the infinite spiritual principle, the infinite Oversoul. In reading the words of such reports, you will often actually catch the spirit of their writers, and enter the same plane of spiritual consciousness upon which their writers dwelt at the time of their writing, and from which their messages were delivered. For this reason, we ask you to consider the following quotations from the Oversoul, that remarkable essay of Emerson. It is written from one of the highest planes of spiritual consciousness, and its words and lines are saturated with the highest quality of spiritual vibrations. It is practically certain to awaken a responsive note in the soul that comes in sympathetic contact with it. Here follow the quotations. The heart which abandons itself to the Supreme Mind finds itself related to all its works, and will travel a royal road to particular knowledge and powers. For in ascending to this primary and aboriginal sentiment, we have come from our remote station on the circumference instantaneously to the center of the world where we see causes and anticipate the universe, which is but a slow effect. This communication is an influx of the divine mind into our mind. It is an ebb of the individual rivulet before the flowing surges of the sea of life. Every distinct apprehension of this central commandment agitates men with awe and delight. A thrill passes through all men at the reception of a new truth, or at the performance of a great action which comes out of the heart of nature. In these communications, the power to see is not separated from the will to do, but the insight proceeds from obedience, and the obedience proceeds from a joyful perception. Every moment when the individual feels himself invaded by it is memorable. Always, I believe, by the necessity of our constitution, a certain enthusiasm attends the individual consciousness of the divine presence. The character and duration of this enthusiasm varies with the state of the individual. There are varying forms of that shudder or awe and delight with which the individual soul always mingles with the universal soul. The nature of these revelations is always the same. They are perceptions of the absolute law. They are solutions of the soul's own questions. They do not answer the questions which the understanding asks. The soul answers never by words, but by the thing itself that is inquired after. Behold, it says, I am born into the great, the universal mind. I, the imperfect, adore my own perfect. I am somehow receptive to the great soul, and thereby do I overlook the sun and the stars and feel them to be but the fair accidents and effects which change and pass. More and more the surges of everlasting nature enter into me, and I become public and human in my regards and actions. So I come to live in thoughts, and to act with energies which are immortal. Does this idea of drawing to yourself the inspiration and illumination of the infinite spirit seem presumptuous, irreverent, forbidden to your will? If so, turn to your own favored book of religious authority, whatever it may be, Jewish, Christian, Mohammedan, Brahmin, Buddhist, Zoroastrian. It matters not which, for each and all of them carry the message of truth in some form, and you will find there the invitation to ask and the promise to furnish the intuitional, inspirational, and illuminating messages of truth, of help, strength, aid, and comfort in the hours of need. For instance, if any man need wisdom, let him ask of God. Also, before they call, I will answer, and while I am speaking they will hear. Also, ask and ye shall receive, and knock and it shall be opened unto you. The invitation always is there. The promise of fulfillment always accompanies it. Next, we offer for your sympathetic consideration the following quotations from a little esoteric manual, highly esteemed by many, and which some believe to have been inspired by high spiritual authority. The manual is known as Light on the Path, and its words were written down by Mabel Collins. Its quality speaks for itself in the following lines culled from its great wealth of the inner teachings. Seek it, the truth, by plunging into the mysterious and glorious depths of your own inmost being. Seek it by testing all experience, by utilizing the senses, in order to understand the growth and meaning of individuality and the beauty and obscurity of those other divine fragments which are struggling side by side with you and form the race to which you belong. Seek it, the truth, by the study of the laws of being, the laws of nature, the laws of the supernatural, and seek it by making the profound obeisance of the soul to the dim star that burns within. Steadily, as you watch and worship, its light will grow stronger. Then you will know that you have found the beginning of the way, and, when you have found the end, its light will suddenly become the infinite light. To have seen thy soul in its bloom is to have obtained a momentary glimpse in thyself of the transfiguration which shall eventually make thee more than man. To recognize is to achieve the great task of gazing into the blazing light without dropping the eyes and not falling back in terror as before some ghastly phantom. This happens to some, and so, when the victory is all but won, it is lost. Then will come a calm, such as comes in a tropical country after a heavy rain, when nature works so swiftly that one may see her action. Such a calm will come to the harassed spirit, and in the deep silence, the mysterious event will occur which will prove that the way has been found. Again and again the battle must be fought and won. It is only for an interval that nature can be still. But to learn is impossible until the first great battle has been won. The mind may recognize truth, but the spirit cannot receive it. Once having passed through the storm and attained its peace, it is then always possible to learn, even though the disciple waver, hesitate, and turn aside. The voice of the silence remains within him, and though he leave the path utterly, yet it will resound and rend him asunder and separate his passions from his divine possibilities. Then, with pain and desperate cries from the deserted lower self, he will return. Only fragments of the great song come to your ears while you are but man. But listen to it, remember it faithfully, so that none which has reached you is lost, and endeavor to learn from it the mystery which surrounds you. In time you will need no teacher, for as the individual has voice, so has that in which the individual exists. Life itself has speech and is never silent, and its utterance is not, as you that are deaf may suppose, a cry. It is a song. Listen to the song of life. Store in your memory the melody you hear. Learn from it the lesson of harmony. Look for it and listen to it, first in your own heart. At first you may say that it is not there. When I search I find only discord. Look deeper. If again you are disappointed, pause and look deeper again. There is a natural melody, an obscure fount, in every heart. It may be hidden over and utterly concealed and silenced, but it is there. At the very base of your nature, you will find faith, hope, and love. Look for it there. We shall not attempt to explain or to comment upon the inspired statements above presented to you. They will become more and more apparent to you as you ponder over them. The study of and meditation over them will open your spiritual ears and make keen your spiritual hearing. Enough to say that the song, the hidden melody, is the song of the soul, the harmonious voice of the spirit within, which speaks without words. It is the voice of the silence which chants, I dwelleth within thee, just as thou dwellest within me. The kingdom of heaven is within thee, just as thou art in the kingdom of heaven of spirit, of that which I am. Spirit abides within its creation, within you, just as you are present in your thoughts, your ideas, your will actions, and your life processes. It wells up in your spiritual consciousness, and when your ears are properly attuned to its high vibrations, you will catch occasional notes of its great song of infinite life. Blessed is he who is able to so still the sounds of the phenomenal world that his ears may receive the notes of the voice of the silence, to catch the rhythms of the soundless sound of the infinite harmony. By cultivating actual spiritual contact between your individual spirit and the universal spirit, you act as does the person who steps out into the open places and allows the rays of the sun to fall upon him. Like a great sun of spiritual power, Spirit is present above you, radiating its beams of presence power upon you. When you recognize and realize its presence and open the channels of your being to the inflow of its beneficent forces, then it energizes, animates, and inspires your entire being. As you have seen in the message of truth, the available strength of these rays and beams, and the degree of your receptivity to them, depend upon your degree of perception, recognition, and realization of the presence power of the Sun of Spirit. That Sun is always there, radiating its power upon all alike. But unless the individual opens himself to its influence, he will not receive it. Inasmuch as Spirit is infinite life, infinite mind, infinite will, Its radiations partake of the presence and power of each of these three aspects of itself. These rays, received into your being, will give you more and more efficient life, more and more efficient mentality, more and more efficient will. All life power, all mind power, all willpower flow from this original source. And you may receive a greater and fuller store of each and all these phases and forms of spiritual power if you will but follow the spirit of the message of truth which has been announced to you. As a writer has said, as one comes into and lives continually in the full, conscious relation of his oneness with the infinite life and power, then all else follows. This it is that brings the realization of such splendors and beauties and joys, as a life that is thus related with the infinite power alone can know. This it is to come into the realization of heaven's richest treasures while walking the earth. This it is to bring heaven down to earth, or rather to bring earth up to heaven. This it is to exchange weakness and impotence for strength, to exchange sorrows and sighings for joy, to exchange fears and forebodings for faith, to exchange longings for realizations. This it is to come into fullness of peace, power, and plenty. The inner teachings of all great religions contain references to a silent place of the soul in which the individual spirit communes with the infinite spirit of life. Many are the references to the inner chamber, the door to which will be opened to him who gives the right knock. Many are the admonitions to enter into thine inner chamber and shut the door. This inner chamber is not the physical place which so many have considered it to be. It is the quiet place of the soul, the sanctuary of the spirit, the state of spiritual consciousness. There is a mental state in which you may still the waters of the ocean of life, so that the image of the infinite sun may be clearly and distinctly reflected in its bosom. This state is called the silence. It is the quiet place of the soul, the value of which is taught by the mystics. It is the silence in the midst of the storm of life. There the winds of the senses and the waves of the passions are stilled, and the waters of the mind cease their troubled movement, their whirlings and their swirlings, and permit the bosom of the ocean to rest quiet and still, allowing the great sun of spirit to picture itself on its placid surface. In that state of quiet and peace the soundless sound is heard. The voice of the silence breathes words of comfort and encouragement, of courage and strength, to the tired soul. In that silence man communes with the great flame of spirit from which has emerged the divine spark within himself. From it he emerges refreshed and strengthened, comforted and contented, better able to meet the requirements of duty, work, and service in the outside world, the world in which the storms of change and becoming rage. In the heart of the storm, in the quiet place of the soul, in the silence of the spirit, there reign peace and power, wisdom and will, life and livingness, the quintessence of the presence power of spirit. He who is wise will seek, find, and avail himself of the peace and strength of the silence. The spirit of the silence is breathed in the old hymn written by Martineau over 75 years ago, the hymn entitled The Secret Place. Its words have brought comfort and peace to thousands of weary souls seeking strength, life, and wisdom. Here are the words of the first verse of that hymn. He who himself and God would know, into the silence let him go, and lifting off pall after pall, reach to the inmost depth of all. A writer says, whenever you are in doubt as to the course you should pursue, after you have turned to every outward means of guidance, let the inward eye see, let the inward ear hear, and allow this simple, natural, beautiful process to go on unimpeded by questionings or doubts. In all dark hours and times of unwanted perplexity we need but to follow one simple direction, found, as all needed directions can be found, in that old book which so many read, but alas, so few interpret. Enter into thine inner chamber and shut the door. Another writer says, one of the most intuitive men we have ever met had a desk in a city office where several other men were doing business constantly and often talking loudly. Entirely undisturbed by the many and various sounds about him, this self-centered, faithful man would, in any moment of perplexity, draw the curtains of privacy so completely about him that B would be as fully enclosed in his own aura, and thereby as effectually removed from all distractions, as though he were alone in some primeval wood. Taking his difficulty with him into the mystic silence, in the form of a direct question to which he expected a direct answer, he would remain entirely passive until the reply came. And never once through many years' experience did he ever find himself disappointed or misled. Never forget that expectation and desire are bride and bridegroom, and forever inseparable, and you will soon find your hitherto darkened way grow luminous with celestial radiance, for with the heaven within, all heavens without you will incessantly cooperate. Ralph Waldo Trine, the popular writer of In Tune with the Infinite, says in that work, "The great central fact in human life, in your own life and in mine, is the coming into a conscious vital realization of our oneness with this infinite life, and the opening of ourselves to this divine inflow. In just the degree that we come into a conscious realization of our oneness with the infinite life and open ourselves to this divine inflow, do we actualize in ourselves the qualities and powers of the infinite life. In the degree that we come into this realization and connect ourselves with this infinite source, do we make it possible for the higher powers to play, to work, to manifest in us. In the degree that we recognize him as the infinite spirit of life and power that is today, at this moment, working and manifesting in and through all, and in the degree that we come into the realization of our oneness with this life. Then, in that degree do we become partakers thereof, and so do we actualize in ourselves the qualities of his life. In the degree that we open ourselves to the inflowing tide of this immanent and transcendental life, do we make ourselves channels through which the infinite intelligence can work. In the above quotations, we see the insistence placed upon the degree of recognition and realization of the infinite presence power. The same insistence has always been placed upon it by the great spiritual teachers of all times, lands, and creeds. It is found to occupy a prominent place in the message of truth herein announced to you. It is an axiom of ancient and modern spiritual philosophy that spirit, the supreme presence power, the ultimate reality, identifies itself with the individual in the degree of the completeness and earnestness with which the individual identifies himself with it. This is the secret of spiritual power. Make it your own, and carry its spirit and meaning ever with you. Guard it well. Never allow it to leave your possession. Above all, never lose it. Not merely in the silence should you make the mental contact with spirit. Outside of it, also, must you carry your consciousness of the essential identity of your individual spirit with the infinite spirit. You must always live and move and have your being in the consciousness that you, your I am I, is a focal point and center of consciousness, life, will, and power of spirit, and in the knowledge that your consciousness of spirit is only a part of spirit's consciousness of itself. All bodies are modes of infinite extension, all souls but modes of infinite spiritual presence power. Never lose sight of this tremendous truth of your essential being. Let it ever constitute a background for your thought, feeling, willing. In this consciousness of your essential identity with spirit, you may dwell in peace, security, and freedom. You become aware that you, verily, rest in the hollow of his hand, and that the sheltering and protecting arms are ever around and about you, that the unseen hand is ever extended to you, ready and willing to clasp your own hand and to lead, assist, guide, and support you in the journey of life. In it, in hours of distress or need, you will feel yourself pressed up to the infinite breast, as the babe is to that of its mother. In it, you will become aware that the kindly light is ever there, shining amidst the encircling gloom, and ever leading you on, step by step, one step at a time, a true step, a sure step, a step toward attainment and victory. With the light of spiritual consciousness kindled within you, alive and burning bright, you may supplant fear with indomitable courage, supplant doubt and skepticism with the faith that knows, supplant sorrow with joy, supplant unrest with peace. In that infinite light, the brooding presence of spirit will hover over you, around you, about you. Standing on the solid rock of truth, you will find that its presence, its power, its peace, its joy will be superimposed upon you, and its essence and livingness will enter into and permeate your entire being. When you wish to draw to yourself the rays of the presence power of Spirit in hours of special need, make use of the following mediation, which is, in substance and in spirit, that which has been handed down from teacher to student, from generation to generation, for many ages, in all lands, by the adherents of the great spiritual philosophy. It will help you to rediscover the light, if you have temporarily lost it. It will help you to discover the light if you have not already found it. In it burns brightly the flame of Spirit, the only source of light, from whence all light comes. In it will be heeded your cry for light, more light. This infinite light of Spirit will illumine the dark places of your soul, banishing doubt, gloom, fear, distrust. Spiritual meditation. Banish from your consciousness the disturbing thoughts, ideas, feelings, and mental images of your finite and conditioned environment, and concentrate your entire attention upon Spirit, the infinite and eternal presence power, the ultimate reality of existence. Think of its infinite and eternal life, its infinite and eternal consciousness, its infinite and eternal will, its infinite and eternal power. In this way, you will flood your mind and soul with the infinite light, and all darkness of the soul will disappear. The dark night of the soul will be transformed into the high noon of spiritual daytime. Lift your thoughts from the temporal and fix them upon the eternal. Raise your thoughts from the finite and fix them upon the infinite. Elevate your thoughts from the changing and fix them upon the changeless. Then, having done this, you are prepared to return to the things and scenes of personal, finite, temporal, changing existence, again to take up your work, duties, service, to return, however, infinitely refreshed, reinvigorated, and filled with new life, spirit, courage, wisdom, and will. Here, we would call your attention to another important point concerning this contact with Spirit, this unison with infinity, of which we have told you. The term unison means harmony, agreement, concord, union. In the present usage, the term carries with it the idea involved in its meaning when it is employed in relation to music, i.e. identity in pitch, coincidence of sounds proceeding from an equality in the number of vibrations made in a given time by two or more sonorous bodies. Even still more significant in this connection is the familiar idea of the attunement of the receiving and sending instruments in wireless telegraphy, or in the even more wonderful wireless radiophone. As you know, the ether may be filled with countless wireless messages or transmitted sounds, yet the receiving instrument will not pick up or record any of them unless it first be tuned to a pitch corresponding to that of the sending instruments. To all the receiving instruments not so attuned, it is practically as if these messages and waves of power were non-existent. Here we have a remarkable instance of those wonderful analogies which are found on all sides in nature, and which are indicated in that axiom of the Hermetic teachings. As above, so below. As within, so without. As in great, so in small. The fundamental idea involved in our thought concerning the unison between the individual spirit and the infinite spirit is based upon the fact expressed in the term vibrations, rightly understood. Not only are all material things in vibration, vibrating by reason of the influence of spirit upon them, and of the spirit dwelling within them, but all spirit and spirit itself is to be conceived as vibrating. Nothing is motionless. Everything is in motion. Wherever there is spirit or spirit, it is true, as the ancient sages and their modern successors inform us, that there is a state of being in which the vibrations are of such infinite intensity and rapidity that all seems to be motionless, standing still and at rest. But, at the last, this is perceived to be infinite motion and not motionlessness. Spiritual vibrations radiate and may be picked up by spiritual instruments properly attuned. Spirit is radioactive. When the individual soul becomes attuned to the Oversoul, when the individual spirit is keyed to the pitch of spirit, then does the life, mind, will, strength of spirit flow into the individual spirit, which is its focal center of expression and manifestation. When the individual spirit is so attuned to spirit, then not only do the messages of spirit reach its mind and soul, but also the power of spirit, its spiritual power, flows into the channels of the individual spirit, there to be used and employed by the latter when it has learned how to apply it properly. You have heard of the mental second wind which, like the physical second wind that comes to the tired runner, so often is attained by one when he has become mentally exhausted. You have, moreover, most likely noted the suggestion of Professor William James that there is a third wind, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh wind of physical, mental, and spiritual energy which become available to the individual who has learned to tap their sources. These sources are really phases of the infinite fount of all power, which in this instruction we have called power, and which in its ultimate essence and nature is spiritual power. The great spiritual teachers of the race have always taught, and teach today, that this infinite fount of power is unlimited and inexhaustible in extent, amount, and degree, its apparent limitations being caused solely by the incapacity of the individual to receive and apply that power. By contacting the infinite supply, by becoming in unison with infinity, by adjusting your spiritual receiving apparatus, you may pick up and make use of the constant and unfailing current of spiritual vibrations which are forever being radiated and emanated by Spirit, the fount of all power. This is far more than a mere figure of speech or metaphorical representation. It is the expression in physical terms of a tremendous truth of spiritual power. Its truth may be proved by you in your own actual experience, provided that you will but go about it in the right way, and we have pointed out to you that right way. It is not enough that you should perceive, recognize, and realize the truth concerning spiritual power. You should also manifest its energies which are available to you. You should demonstrate the truth in your everyday life and work. The infinite spiritual power is not static. It is dynamic. It is not for rest. It is for use, action, and employment in the activities of the world. It is impossible, however, for you to possess any marked degree of the perception, recognition, and realization of this truth without also manifesting and demonstrating it in at least some degree. Even a partial perception and realization of the infinite presence power of Spirit will impart to you an increased efficiency, proficiency, and method of application of its energies and forces. Conscious application of spiritual power soon passes down to the plane of your subconscious, and thereafter becomes habitual and instinctive with you. By the right application of spiritual power, you open the doors of the storehouse of the infinite supply. The infinite supply furnishes the material and means wherewith wants, necessities, and needs are supplied, filled, gratified, satisfied. All material and all forces are under the control of spiritual power. You are entitled to all that is necessary for your full, rightful expression of the life and spirit within you. The material for your needs is contained within the substance which is plastic and responsive to the power of the Spirit. Spirit contains all the power necessary to mold and shape that material into objective form. All that is needed by you is the faith and will to apply that power which is within you. Throughout all nature, we find the operation of the law of supply, the law of use. All life instinctively draws upon the infinite supply for all that is required for its normal needs, requirements, necessities. The existence of an instinctive one implies the existence of the supply of material which will satisfy it. This implicit promise of supply is found in all nature. Its spirit is voiced in the inspired statement that the Lord will provide. This promise is not a vain mockery. It is a grand truth of existence. The supply is always there. The creature has but to open its channels to the inflow and to reach out toward the source. Having obtained lawful and rightful access to the great storehouse of the infinite supply, and knowing yourself to be the true heir to its treasures, your supply is then limited only by your capacity for finding out that which you need for your rightful expression of life. That capacity may be developed and perfected by you by means of an increasing degree of unison with infinity, of a fuller perception, recognition, and realization of the truth concerning spiritual power. The supply is equal to the demand. but the demand must be made properly, confidently, and with faith and courage. When you set into operation the spiritual power at your disposal, you will begin to attract to yourself that which is necessary for your use, need, and support, that which will relieve and remove your lack and want. You will do this in precisely the same way that the lilies of the field attract to themselves that which they need for their support and use, that which raises them up to that state of natural magnificence, excelling even Solomon in all his glory, as you have been told by a high spiritual authority. You are a creator. You create your environment. You have always done so. Whether you consciously will to do so or not, your spiritual forces are always working in this way. Consciously or unconsciously, willingly or unwillingly, you are setting into operation great spiritual forces which produce certain material effects. You are a builder, a creator, even though you know it not. This being so, wisdom dictates that you build intelligently and in accordance with your heart's desire. So, build thee more stately mansions, O my soul, should ever be your demand. Build for yourself the kind of world of which you have dreamed. Make your dreams come true. Trine voices a great truth when he says, each is building his own world. We build from within, and we attract from without. Thought is the force with which we build, and thoughts are forces. Like builds like, and like attracts like. In the degree that thought is spiritualized, does it become more subtle and powerful in its workings. This spiritualizing is in accordance with law and is within the power of all. Everything is first worked out in the unseen before it is manifested in the seen. In the ideal, before it is realized in the real. In the spiritual, before it shows forth in the material. The realm of the unseen is the realm of cause. The realm of the seen is the realm of effect. The nature of an effect is always determined and conditioned by the nature of its cause. In this book, we do not attempt to give you specific directions for the employment of spiritual power in any of its many possible particular forms of use and application. In other books of this series, we have pointed out to you how you may effectively employ this spiritual power, transmuted into personal power, in many different forms of its effective application. In the first book of the series, the one entitled Personal Power, we have shown you that all personal power proceeds, directly or indirectly, from a great principle of all power which we call, simply, power. In the present book, we have identified this power principle with spirit, and have shown you that all power is spiritual power at the last analysis. In this book, also, we have shown you that this spiritual power, this power of spirit, may be drawn upon freely by your individual spirit when it enters into conscious unison with infinity, in attunement with spirit. Each other book of this series is a key unlocking some particular door of personal power. The present volume is the master key which releases the master lock, without which the individual key will not be able to turn the individual lock and thus open its particular door. If you are acquainted with the operation of the locks upon the boxes of the safe deposit vaults of the large cities, you will understand more clearly this illustration. Lacking the master key, you will never be able to secure the full measure of personal power in any of its phases, nor will you ever be able to employ that power most intelligently, to the best advantage, and with the highest degree of efficiency. The knowledge of spirit, the infinite and eternal, ultimate and sovereign, presence power, constitutes that which, when known, causes all else to be known, concerning the manifestation of personal power. A writer has said of this knowledge of truth and power that it hews open the path, as the lightning splits the darkness. It dissolves doubts, cuts knots of chronic impossibility, melts circumstances, pierces shadows like a flash of glory, dashes through the jungle of appearances like the horn of a unicorn. The little occult manual, believed by many to have been inspired, to which we have previously referred, contains the following instructive and suggestive bit of esoteric teaching. It refers to the battle of life on the plane of material existence, and of the real self or spirit which abides as the inner self of the individual spirit, and which springs to action when it is perceived, recognized, realized, and acknowledged by the individual soul, and when its aid and service is demanded by the latter as its rightful heritage. Listen to the voice of the message. Stand aside in the coming battle, and though thou fightest, be not thou the warrior. Look for the warrior, and let him fight in thee. Take his orders for battle, and obey him. Obey him, not as though he were a general, but as though he were thyself, yet infinitely wiser and stronger than thyself. Look for him, else in the fever and hurry of the fight thou mayest pass him, and he will not know thee unless thou knowest him. If thy cry reach his listening ear, then will he fight in thee, and fill the dull void therein. And if this is so, then canst thou go through the fight cool and unwearied, standing aside, and letting him battle for thee. Then it will be impossible for thee to strike one blow amiss. But if thou look not for him, if thou pass him by, there is no safeguard for thee. Thy brain will reel, thy heart will grow uncertain, and in the dust of the battlefield thy sight and senses will fail, and thou wilt not know thy friends from thy enemies. He is thyself, yet thou art but finite and liable to error. He is eternal and is sure. He is eternal truth. When once he has entered thee and become thy warrior, he will never utterly desert thee, and in the day of the great peace he will become one with thee. You can stand upright now, firm as a rock amid the turmoil, obeying the warrior who is thyself and thy king, unconcerned in the battle save to do his bidding, having no longer any care as to the result of the battle. For one thing only is important, that the warrior shall win, and you know that he is incapable of defeat. Standing thus, cool and awakened, use the hearing that you have acquired by pain and the destruction of pain. Carry with you the echo of the concluding words of the message of truth as presented to you in this instruction. In the degree that you perceive, recognize, and realize your essential identity with me, the supreme presence power, the ultimate reality, in that degree will you receive and be able to manifest my spiritual power. I am over and above you, under and beneath you. I surround you on all sides. I am also within you, and you are in me. From me you proceed, and in me you live, and move, and have your being. Seek me by looking within your own being, and likewise by looking for me in infinity, for I abide both within and without your being. If and when you will adopt and live according to this truth, then will you be able to manifest that truth. In and by it alone are freedom and invincibility, and true and real presence and power to be found, perceived, realized, and manifested. End of Unison with Infinity, the last chapter of the book Spiritual Power by William Walker Atkinson. Click on the link in the description for the entire Personal Power series. Subscribe for more content on your personal power.